So, when the US Treasury Secretary stops talking like a banker and starts talking like a schoolyard bully, you know Canada has officially hit a nerve.
Scott Bessent just went on national TV to warn Mark Carney not to pick a fight with Donald Trump. But let's get one thing straight, okay? Canada didn't start this fight. We're just the ones ending our dependence on it.
Today, we're exposing the panic behind the gaslighting. Washington is terrified because Carney isn't flinching, gold is exploding, and for the first time in decades, Canada is showing the US what FAFO really looks like.
They're threatening 100% tariffs to keep us in line. But the more they scream, the more they reveal who actually has the leverage. We're breaking down the US meltdown and why Canada's new trade deals are driving the White House absolutely crazy.
Let's start with the clip that set this off. Scott Bessent on CNBC doing his best reasonable technocrat voice while basically waving a baseball bat at Canada.
He tells the interview, I just encourage Prime Minister Carney to do what he thinks is best for the Canadian people, not his own virtue signaling. I would not pick a fight going into Kuzma, or as they call it, USMCA, to score cheap political points.
In other words, nice little economy you got up there, Canada. Shame if anything tariffy happened to it. He's calling Carney anti-American for the crime of describing reality. As if Canada's job is to sit in the corner and smile while Trump threatens 100% tariffs on our goods. As if Carney's sin is not the tariffs we're already facing, but the fact that he dared to describe what Trump is doing in Davos out loud in front of other adults.
And just to put a bow on it, Bessent trots out his line about technocrats becoming politicians. In my investment career, I've seen what happens when a technocrat tries to pivot and become a politician. It never really works out well.
Right, except the technocrat he's sneering at ran two of the world's major central banks, has spent his life stabilizing markets, and is now the one getting standing ovations at Davos, while the supposed business genius in Washington is tanking America's credibility and lighting the rules-based order on fire.
You'll notice something about Bessent's little sermon. He never engages with the actual content of Carney's speech. He doesn't refute a single argument. He just attacks the motives and waves the trade deal around like it's a weapon.
That, people, is gaslighting. You don't argue the facts, you frame reality itself as dangerous. If you say what's true, you're putting your people at risk.
Carney talked about American hegemony. He warned that great powers have started turning economic integration into a weapon. Tariffs as leverage, supply chains as blackmail. He basically said, if you keep using the global economy like a crowbar, don't be surprised when countries walk away and build something without you.
And then he did the unforgivable thing. He backed it up with an actual strategy. Middle powers working together, diversifying trade, spreading risk, building new deals so you're never again hostage to one country's whims.
The result? A standing ovation, not just polite clapping. The everyone in the room just realized the old era is over kind of reaction. And now, back at home, Carney's hammering that message into a single line Canadians can repeat. 12 trade deals, 4 continents, 6 months.
And that line really matters, because when Bessent tells Canada not to pick a fight, what he really means is don't remind people you have options. Don't talk about Europe. Don't talk about Asia. Don't talk about critical minerals, seafood, EVs, uranium. Just accept that your fate lives and dies in Washington.
Except the polls in Canada say something very different. Right after that Davos speech and Carney's follow-up in Quebec City, his party jumps to the high 40s in national support. Carney himself surged to 60% approval ratings. Conservatives, they're stuck in the 30s.
And all of a sudden, premiers are talking like, yeah, so we've always quietly respected the Prime Minister's foreign policy, actually. And you know what? That's fine. We'll take it. They have realized that a strong Canada is a united Canada. For the first time in a decade, we see all parties working together.
And that's the part that's driving Trump and Bessent crazy. Carney didn't just criticize them. He did it in a way that's landing with voters, rattling markets, and giving other countries permission to admit The U.S. can't be treated as a single point of failure anymore.
Now, if you're a Treasury Secretary watching all of this, you have one job, basically. Calm things down, reassure allies, project stability, make investors think, okay, somebody in Washington is still tethered to reality.
Instead, we get Scott Bessent acting less like a Treasury Secretary and more like Trump's economic hitman, without the economic part actually working.
And at Davos, after Trump threatened tariffs on Europe for not lining up behind his Greenland adventure, well, Bessent didn't show up and say, let's find a constructive path. He accused Europe of hysteria, told them to sit back and take a deep breath, and warned them not to escalate.
Oh, but Europe escalated anyway. They threatened nearly $100 billion in retaliatory measures, and markets freaked out. But guess who blinked? Not Europe. Not the so-called hysterical middle powers. The White House.
And that's strike one. Misreading the room and lecturing your allies while they're the ones actually saving you from yourself.
Then when he's asked about investors like big Danish pension funds pulling out of the U.S. treasuries, any competent Treasury Secretary would say something boring and soothing and put the question to bed.
But nope. Scott Bessent's answer? Denmark's investment is irrelevant, like Denmark itself. That's just an absolutely crazy response. Nothing says we're a stable, trustworthy partner like randomly insulting a NATO ally and its entire economy while your currency is sliding and your debt is exploding.
And this is happening while gold is screaming past $5,000 an ounce, up from $4,000 3 months ago. Now that's not normal movement.
There's a term for this on Wall Street, the debasement trade. When people think that you're debasing your currency, they run to gold. They don't do that because they're relaxed. They do it because they think a recession or worse is on the horizon.
And instead of calming anybody down, Bessent is hurling playground insults at U.S. governors, calling Gavin Newsom a mashup of a movie serial killer and a 90s beach doll. He's threatening to take on various people in Trump's own administration. He's approving budgets and foreign policies that even conservative economists are calling a path to ruin.
So when a guy with a track record turns to Canada and says, don't you dare criticize us, you should be focusing on your own people, not your political career. Yeah, that's rich.
This is a coordinated attack. Bessent is gaslighting two audiences at once.
For Americans, the gaslighting is, don't worry, this is fine. The dollar's down 10%, gold's at a level that would have made 19th century California prospectors faint, the deficit is on track to almost double this decade, and foreign investors are quietly backing out of U.S. debt. But if you listen to Bessent, the real risk is Europe standing up for itself, Canada diversifying trade, and Mark Carney getting applause. And for Canadians, the gaslighting is even more direct. He's trying to split Carney from his own voters. Either you're virtue signaling against Trump for your own career, or you're working for the Canadian people. Pick one.
Except that's backwards. Carney's the one standing up and saying we're not going to base our entire future on the mood swings coming out of Washington. He's the one signing deals so our farmers, fishermen and women, and manufacturers have alternatives when Trump slaps tariffs on a whim.
And notice the pattern here. They lie about a phone call, claiming Carney walked back his Davos remarks. Then Carney comes out publicly and says, no, I told the president I meant exactly what I said. And instead of apologizing, they double down on the threats. Nice majority you got there, Mark. Shame if your exports got held up at the border.
Bessent's response is to double down on the narrative, not facts. He claims Carney is the one playing politics. Carney is the one risking Canadians' prosperity. Carney is the one who needs to watch his tone if he wants a fair deal with the USA.
Meanwhile, Canadian analysts, even the ones who aren't exactly liberal fanboys, are on TV saying the Trump guys are bullies. This is how they operate with everyone. Don't do that or you'll pay the price. And as one panelist on CBC put it, the whole routine has become liturgy for this Trump government. Threaten, intimidate, stir up anxiety, and hope someone flinches. And then move on to the next crisis.
This isn't happening in a vacuum either. We've seen this movie already with Ambassador Hoekstra and Lutnick. It just goes on and on.
Yeah, Hoekstra was out telling Canadians to stay out of U.S. politics, lecturing us about criticizing Trump, warning about consequences if we didn't play nice.
And then in the next breath, you have Bessent and the rest of the crew inserting themselves directly into our politics, trashing our prime minister, trying to sow division at home, fanning the flames with every media hit they can get. It's the same talking points, but new mouthpieces. And again, it's not working the way they think. Canadians are watching the bullying. They're watching the Davos contrast, watching Carney stand there and say, "I meant what I said." And the reaction here isn't, "Oh no, Mark went too far." The reaction is, finally, there's someone up here who understands that you can't negotiate with this White House from a place of fear. You negotiate from a place of leverage.
Because the truth is, Canadians have been standing up to this regime for over a year. We've boycotted travel. We've pulled the booze and the food off of the shelves. And right now, we're ready to dig in. While they're treading water, trying to survive in their own chaos, we're finding our spine here in Canada.
You want to see why the US is panicking? Look at who the world is listening to right now. Trump's Davos remarks were a jumble of grievances and score settling. Carney's speech was about risk, resilience, and a future where middle powers don't just sit quietly while the big guys wreck the entire system.
One of those messages makes investors feel like adults are still in charge, and the other makes them go buy more gold.
Now let's talk about leverage, because Bessent clearly doesn't want you thinking about that. Canada, the US, and Mexico, well, we have to decide this year whether to extend CUSMA, renegotiate, or let it expire.
Now, Trump is threatening to blow it all up. Bessent is trying to frame that as a one-sided danger. Canada has to be careful, or we'll get crushed by the giant next door.
Listen, American industries need CUSMA just as much as we do, maybe more. They're farmers and energy companies. They can't survive without us. Trump knows the second Canada has real options in Asia and Europe, his bully pulpit completely disappears.
And on top of that, Canada is not the same country we were a decade ago in trade terms. We've been pushing hard into Europe, Asia, and beyond. That 12 deals, 4 continents, 6 months line isn't just branding. It's the start of a different power equation.
That's why Trump freaked out and threatened 100% tariffs on all Canadian goods if we dared to sign a deal with China. Because he knows the second Canada has real options, the whole "you live because the United States," that routine completely falls apart.
Carney is using this moment to send a message that goes way beyond Canada. He's saying to every country in that middle power band, stop acting like spectators. Use your markets, use your resources, use your alliances.
And the proof that it's landing? Well, the more he talks, the more the US feels the need to send out people like Bessent to try to discredit him personally. Not counter his ideas, just taint the messenger and hope the message dies with him.
And underneath all the insults and threats, there's a very simple story about the US economy right now.
You've got a president addicted to tariffs and perfectly happy to run record deficits as long as he can brand something with his name on it. You've got a Treasury secretary who's decided his role is not to push back, but to cheerlead.
And you've got gold at levels that scream, we don't trust the dollar, bond yields creeping up because people don't want to hold US debt, and a budget that credible economists on the right are calling grossly irresponsible.
And instead of saying, okay, we need to reassure the world that the grown-ups are still in charge, Bessent is telling Europe that they're hysterical, telling Denmark it's irrelevant, telling Canada to shut up and be grateful, and telling Americans that all of this is totally normal, don't worry.
That's why some commentators are literally joking about creating a new indicator called the Bessent. The more he shoots his mouth off, the more likely it is that a serious downturn is on the way. And here's what this means for Canada. If we let people like Hoekstra and Bessent define the story, then anytime we defend ourselves, it gets framed as virtue signaling. Anytime we diversify, it's anti-American. Anytime we tell the truth about tariffs as weapons, we're picking a fight.
That's how you trap a country. Not with one tariff announcement, but with a narrative that says, you're too small to complain. If you stand up for yourself, you're risking everything.
And the response to that has to be exactly what we've started to see from Carney and Canadians. Calm, direct, and relentless. I meant what I said in Davos, and We won't let anyone dictate who we trade with. We have more than one partner, and that makes us stronger, not weaker. Gaslighting only works if you start doubting what you can see with your own eyes. And the Trump regime is counting on that in everything from what's happening in Minnesota to the stock markets to trade wars.
Canada doesn't exist at the mercy of one man's ego in Washington. Canada lives because Canadians keep choosing to be a country with our own interests, our own alliances, and our own backbone.
So, if you want more sanity checks like this, where we break down the noise and talk about what's really going on behind the threats, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next one. And if you want to go even deeper, join the A-Team and hop on our Substack for the stuff that we can't fit into a 15-minute video here on YouTube.
So remember, Canada, keep those eyes open and don't let the gaslighters tell you that gravity's optional just because they're the ones falling.
Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow.